Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another webinar here on Food Industry Executive. My name is Hillary Baker. I'm the Director of Strategic Growth, and I just want to take a minute to thank you all for being here. We're super excited to have you. But before we dive into the presentation, I have just a couple of housekeeping items. First, if you have any questions at all during the broadcast, go ahead and drop those into the questions panel, and they will be addressed during the broadcast. Second, we will be sending out a recording of the event later on this afternoon, so just be sure to keep an eye out for that. Now, without further ado, I'm thrilled to welcome you to Recipe for Success, the importance of recipe management in your ERP solution. Kyle and Alex, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Hillary. And thank you for everyone who has and is joining. I'm seeing the participant number slowly tick up there, although it appears to have kind of stopped there at the number we're at, which is great. So again, really appreciate everyone being able to jump on today and walk through a little bit about recipe management with your ERP system. And we're going to go through some additional slides and some general high-level information. And then more excitingly, probably for everyone, will be Alex showcasing some of what DCOM can do and talking a little bit more generally about recipe management with a view into DCOM as an ERP. So just very quickly, my name is Kyle McTavish. I am the demand generation manager. I have been with ECI and DCOM for coming up on a year. And Alex is a sales engineer for us. And again, she is the one who will be kind of demoing everything here when I'm done with my slides. And we'll walk through DCOM and some of the modules and pieces that are relevant for recipe management. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Just talking about recipe management and formula management in general. This is, I'm sure, well known to everyone on the call. This is a very specific topic, being recipe management in a food and beverage ERP, but recipe management and formula management are very similar, if not the same, in different industries and kind of wear different hats as far as what we're categorizing things as, but kind of just wanted to set that up in case anyone has joined the call who doesn't currently have an ERP or is looking for one or looking to switch. Some of the things that help or assist with the recipe management portion of an ERP are streamlined processes, improving efficiencies, ensuring consistency and accuracy. On the next couple of slides, I am going to share some very specific information and studies on data of how efficiencies can be had within food and beverage manufacturing and some of the potential risks that these things mitigate, and QA and risk management just in general. Talking through the cost of inaccurate recipes, why precision matters, right? So it's wasteful use of ingredients. There are a couple of different components there. Increased costs, and again, we're going to touch on some of those very specific metrics here in the coming slides, but increased cost. Decreasing cost is always something that is music to a business owner's ears, but the other part of it's the environmental impact, whether it is just reducing overall waste and potentially the marketability of being able to decrease waste and measure the reduction of waste. The big one from a branding standpoint for a marketing guy, right, is the inconsistency that can happen with product quality and dissatisfaction and potential recalls in general. The recalls are a little more relevant, I think, every day, as it appears more and more kind of popping up in a couple very recently in the news. But just a couple other metrics around just the topic in general. There are a couple studies that actually show it to be more than this, but 30% of wasted production time is spent on non-value added activities. So, 3/10 of that wasted production time are things that are just not adding value to the business or to production in general. And then regulatory non-compliance fines. A couple of different studies here. This was the one that seemed to be most cited, but average recalls cost companies more than $10 million, which I don't need to tell everyone is unbelievably significant and only gets more costly as your brand is bigger and as your general footprint is out there more. So again, just looking at some of these key considerations, accuracy and compliance. 73% of consumers say accurate labeling is crucial when choosing food products. So one of the things that Alex is actually going to walk through within DCOM's ERP specifically are labeling, and we're going to address proactively some of the questions that come from accuracy and labeling. The other portion of that, again, kind of alluded to it before, is the reduction of risk of fines and potential legal issues. There are some other statistics as well about ensuring the accuracy of these and how one individual miscalculation or misprint loses brand trust, particularly with parents. But simplifying label creation, automating these calculations, that's also a big portion of the R&D part of your business. DCOM does a lot with recipe management in general that can be scaled as R&D processes are implemented. And some other general bullet points, just quality control and shelf life considerations, product safety and quality. We already talked about that. The potential large cost of a recall, shelf life management, revision and version control. When Alex and I and a few other folks were preparing for this webinar itself, we were actually talking about revisions and version control and being able to track changes and consistency. So I know that that is a portion of at least what DCOM can offer that she is going to show a little bit more information on. And then again, if you can't tell, I'm the data guy, but I think these data points just really tell a story for us about how important a lot of what we do within our ERP and the things that end up being really customer facing are so important. But production waste, if we can, if any of us can reduce waste by 20%, obvious benefits there all the way around. Saving time spent on manual calculations. So that's the other part that was discussed as we were preparing for this, and is a common theme when we're talking about ERPs in general, is all of these manual calculations and the cost of managing different parts of the business from different spreadsheets, and having this system that does this and another system, and these systems don't talk. And again, Alex is going to walk us through some of what that looks like and how an ERP, specifically DCOM, can be beneficial in those areas. Faster recipe creation, scaling recipes easily, so as production either ramps up or ramps down. Different calculations, obviously, within the recipes can be changed, and Alex is going to show us some of that as well. And then real-time data, just some of the insights that come from having a single system ERP that does it all. And then again, just a couple of other pieces. The manual calculations and data entry, just alluded to it now, but that is a very common theme as we look at companies with all these different systems that, again, some talk to themselves, some talk to each other, some don't. But there's just so much efficiency to be had there from an ERP standpoint. And then the last couple of points that I think are really important, which is why they're left in the place they are, is just regulatory compliance, the fines, the product recalls, everything that comes with that. When we're talking about regulatory compliance, it's something that is obviously ever evolving, but there is now talk of legislation that would kind of ramp up everything involved with traceability and chain of custody and everything going on with that portion of the business. And then finally, the potential cost of having any of these issues that happen within your production, loss of consumer trust. I alluded earlier to the study with I think it was a mom specifically who had a couple of quotes there, but it only takes one recall or one major issue within the production, and as products get out and make it to shelf, it only takes one of those issues to really create a major problem for the business and for your business. So guys, I really appreciate everyone jumping on and taking a look here in general at just the landscape of recipes and recipe management. And I am actually going to pass it over to Alex, who is going to walk us through DCOM and how DCOM works with recipe management and in general.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. I want to reiterate what Kyle said, though, and thank everyone for spending your time and joining this call. So I'm going to cover a couple of the key points that Kyle talked through. I'm just going to specify them in DCOM and use DCOM as a guideline for some of those key concepts. So when we're going through implementation with customers, when we're talking with food and beverage customers, one of the core concepts we discussed is making sure all the control is in one spot. So when you're building out a recipe, when you're working with customers, you want to make sure that you have the control built into your system to ensure that downstream, your production team doesn't have to worry about ensuring they're using organic products, or when it comes to scheduling your production jobs, I don't have to worry that, hey, this is an allergen-based product. Here's how we need to order our production schedule. So a big focus is keep everything in one space, one point of control, and then have a team or a group of R&D people or formulation people to manage those regulations, even quality teams. So looking at this, I have a product for trail mix. And when we talk about food and beverage, some key concepts are going to be around allergens, label claims, costing, as Kyle mentioned, shelf life considerations, as Kyle mentioned, and then just an overall R&D process. So looking in an ERP system, you're going to see pretty much your active formula. So that's what I'm looking at right now. I have a bulk trail mix product. This is my default formula. Every time I create a job for this product, this is what the system's going to pull in. On top of this, this is going to give me opportunity to forecast out my products, and it's going to have downstream effects from a purchasing standpoint. The system needs to reference back to kind of that default, that main formula. So that's what we're looking at here is my standard trail mix formula. As you'll see, we get into different concepts. So looking at a product like this, you're eventually going to need to say, hey, this contains peanuts. This is a dairy-based product. This has egg in it. All of those are critical allergens in the US, but as you expand outside of the US, there are additional allergens. So oats, that is an allergen in Japan, in other countries. So managing your product, managing those allergens, or any label claims can all be done here. So as a customer contacts you and says, we need a peanut-free product, you're going to easily be able to sort on your recipes which products contain any nuts or peanuts specifically. So when we talk about R&D processes, there's a couple concepts that are really critical. And the allergens and the label claims are the two big ones, but also the costing aspect. So I mentioned early on, you want to manage everything in one place. And you'll notice my BOM structure is a bulk bill of material, and then I have my finished good. So if I have multiple pack sizes, I don't want to have to maintain a bill of material, the corresponding ingredients that go into each of those pack sizes. I want to have a bulk product, and then I want that bulk to roll into all of my finished good pack sizes. So what that does is if the nutritional information on any of my bulk BOMs change, or let's say we remove any milk products on these formulas, that's going to roll into my finished good products to ensure that everything is seamless throughout. So you want to do this with as little hiccups as possible. And by using that bulk and packaging layout, That's going to allow you to just maintain things in one spot and trust the system's going to roll everything up accordingly. So again, looking at this BOM, now I'm in my R&D formula. You'll notice the concept I have here is a customer called me up and they said, we want an entirely organic trail mix. So from a control aspect, I've marked this as lab only. So security-wise, only a certain group of people should be able to access this. I don't want this formula going into my production team. I don't want something happening downstream, so I've marked this as lab only. Not only that, I've added in a stage gate process to say, okay, we're developing this new formula for any customer. It needs to go through certain people before we can actually sign off, before we can confirm that this is good to go. So again, putting that control in the system is critical to make sure the downstream effects, the compliance, everything along those lines is managed. So my stage gate goes through initial formulation, I have my shop floor involved, and then I have specific people involved. So rather than sending emails or Teams messages, the system tells those people at those certain steps, as formulation goes in and finishes their sequence, now it alerts the shop floor, you need to go in and perform the first production run or a test batch for this trail mix. So that operates as a visual control for everyone who needs to be involved, but also security control. So until the customer signs off on this, you can't uncheck this lab only checkbox. The key is just putting the system and using the tools that your system provides to you to actually maintain what the customer is requiring, what regulations are required, things like that. One of the concepts Kyle mentioned as well was the costing. So cost is a huge, huge discussion these days, especially with the volatility of the supply chain. When you're quoting out products or quoting out package sizes and things to customers, this cost that's reflective here isn't necessarily going to reflect exactly what you're going to charge to that customer. So it's important to understand current costs, future costs, and any standard costs that you're expecting on a product by product basis. So within an ERP, I can look at almonds and I can store all of my certified vendors, their corresponding costs, and then report that to the customer of if you want your lead time to be 5 days, you're probably looking at a 10-cent higher cost than a 20-day lead time. So all of that information can be stored in the system. The certified vendors, their lead time, their certifications, like I said, so organic, halal, kosher vendors, things like that, should all be managed in that one space. In addition to the certifications on the vendors that impacts pricing, that impacts lead times, then you look at what that impact is on maybe substitutes or country of origin. So the preferred method, and what we see 90% of the time, is a peanut is a peanut, regardless of where it's purchased from. However, there are occasions where we may purchase it from a different country, and at that point, we want to treat it as something separate. So peanuts sourced from South American countries, peanuts sourced from European countries. I can build in those allowable substitutes, whether it's on a revision basis, maybe it's a customer specific basis, but you can define what those substitutes are and that timeline that they're available for. So maybe something happened with your vendor, you're going through a recall process. I need to say for the next 6 months, we're only going to use organic peanuts in my processing for my trail mix. So again, to go back to that costing, I can now alert my customers that for the next 6 months, my cost of my trail mix is going to increase by however many cents is related to this organic peanut. So it kind of pulls together really the focus on all of my products, all of my vendors, all of the differences in label claims and allergens related to those products. I haven't left my system. I've kept it all in one space. And you'll notice that I haven't actually needed to touch my finished good because I'm just maintaining it here. So being able to maintain it in one spot and trust that that's going to roll into my packaging is really important from a system. So that concept, what we see the most of and what's really important is, again, with the allergens, but getting into nutritional information. So in a customer-facing industry, if they require you to get your calories down on your products, or maybe they're looking for products with a lower amount of saturated fat, you can work with the tools that are in the system and scale accordingly. So I can use these scaling tools up at the top to say, I want to scale to a specific size, I want to scale to a specific weight, I want to scale to a specific amount of calories. So again, letting the system do the work for you and building that control in to see exactly what the downstream effects are going to be. I've mentioned that I've focused entirely on my bulk product here. Ultimately, what that does and how that can be managed is that rolls into, that rolls into my finished goods, which is when I go out to generate my product spec sheet or my nutritional fact panels. Now I can generate those all from my finished goods rather than maintaining it on, rather than going to a separate system like a specific nutritional fact panel system. I can just go in and generate look at my trail mix case, which is my finished good product. And then from here, I can print out that specific nutritional fact panel in order to add that to my paperwork, send it to my customers. Whatever steps you need to do after that point, I can do from here. So I'll print my fact panel at this point. That's going to contain all the exact same information. If I were to go in and remove the oat clusters from my bulk formula, those changes would immediately update here. So gives me my ingredients. Again, those label claims, this isn't allergen free, so this does contain nuts. This does have gluten in it. That information could be added here. And then this is typically part of a product spec sheet to send along to your customers or even send with shipments. So it just depends on process at that point. But the main focus is I've only had to update one piece of data, and now it's all available here. So with that, I want to throw it back to Kyle to cover any questions, any additional areas that may be important to anyone on the call.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. So if anyone has any questions, I do see a couple here. If anyone has any questions, you can find, I think this was mentioned, but if not, just to clarify, in the bottom middle of the toolbar here on the Zoom instance, you will see a Q&A tab. If you click the Q&A tab, you can actually you can actually put a question into there, and we can read it off and answer it for you. So a couple of the questions that came in, when we have two or more systems in place that achieve different parts of what an ERP normally does, how does an ERP, one system ERP, help us as opposed to us having separate instances doing a whole bunch of different things?
So great question. One of the big concepts we talk about is having that single source of truth. And I mentioned that a couple times. So if you have a quality system that's separate from your ERP system, now you lose that link between your lots, your received product, your produced product, and what's actually happening from a quality standpoint. So if I receive in a product, let's say I receive in raisins, and I have a system that has quality control, that has documentation. Now, when I run a recall, I can see what those original quality control results are. I can see any documentation that's received. I have that full visibility and those control pieces built into the system to ensure that it is hyper tight as I go through, especially in the food and beverage industry. If we're receiving in product and it has to go in a quality control hold, I want it to go into that quality control hold. And I don't want to go to a separate system and say, okay, lot number 58919 from purchase order 2020, so on and so forth. I don't want to have to retype that in, because now I lose that visibility when I'm going in to produce this item, or when I'm going to maybe perform a recall. So keeping everything in one system is going to give you visibility without having to jump around. And it provides the control throughout the process to make sure everything's within spec. Every vendor has hit their basic requirements. So if I keep that quality control in there, now I can actually build vendor scorecards, and I can start to hold my vendors accountable on what they're sending us.
Very good. One of the questions I think that I want to bring up here, and again, if anyone wants to drop any into the Q&A portion, great. If not, no worries. But Alex, can you just talk to us about a little bit more about why it's so important to have an ERP that can specifically address a food and beverage manufacturer, right? So as we're alluding to before, a lot of these times, a lot of these companies that have been working a certain way for so long have all these separate systems. Can you talk a little bit about why those things are so important and how DCOM kind of checks all those boxes as far as the needs generally of a food and bev manufacturer?
Yep, absolutely. So I've said it a couple of times now, but that single source of truth concept is so important, especially in the food and beverage industry. When it comes to performing a recall, you have to perform those in a specific amount of time, 90 minutes. So that has to be, you want that to flow as smoothly as possible. And when you work with a company that only works with batch and process customers, we've built all of that in. We've had practice with it. We've worked with customers for over 28 years. So we know exactly what's required, exactly what problems are going to come up from a production side. So I mentioned it earlier, but scheduling by allergen. From our experience, that's important. It's built into the base code of our system, so it doesn't require customization. It's just ready to go. So your system's set up for your industry, for your business, and then you don't have to worry about, okay, I need my system to do this for me. Rather, you know the system's going to do it for you. We'll just configure it to work best for your business. And then as your business, as your industry grows, the system's equipped to handle that.
Awesome. Very good. All right. Well, everyone, we're a little bit ahead of time here, but we have gone through everything that we had planned to go over today. I want to reiterate what I think we've all said at this point, which is I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us and hear about a very specific topic. So we are actually going to be running webinars here with Food Industry Executive relatively frequently. So I am looking forward to hopefully continuing some conversations with ECI and with DCOM in general, and we'll continue to put out what we hope is relevant content for y'all. And I know there are some follow-up pieces that are coming. So again, thank you, and I'm going to pass it back over to Hillary.
All right, thank you so much, Kyle, for the great questions, and Alex for the presentation. Really good stuff there. And everybody, attendees, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an excellent presentation, and as Kyle said, we will be sending out some follow-up materials, so keep an eye on your inbox for the recording, and have a great rest of your day.